I want you to think back to when you were a teenager. Think about that feeling, that specific, electric feeling of slipping out of the house when everyone's asleep. The thrill of it, the freedom. You probably did it once, maybe more than once. I did it exactly one time, and I will never ever do it again. It was a Friday night in late October, somewhere outside of Columbus, Ohio. My parents were asleep by 11 like always. My buddy Derek had texted me around midnight. There was a bonfire at the old Callaway property about 2 miles down the road. Kids from school, the whole thing. I was 17. I thought I was invincible. I waited until the house was completely quiet. Then I pulled on a hoodie, grabbed my phone, and eased out the back door so slowly, it took me almost 4 minutes to get it fully open without making a sound. Cold air hit me in the face the second I stepped outside. That sharp, late October cold that bites right through a hoodie like it's made of paper. I remember thinking I should go back and grab a jacket. I didn't. The walk to the Callaway property was along an old county road with no streetlights. Just gravel on the shoulder and flat Ohio farmland stretching out on both sides. My phone flashlight was on, but I kept the beam low because I was still close enough to home that I didn't want to risk my parents seeing a light moving outside their window. I walked fast. I remember my sneakers crunching on the gravel, the sound of frogs somewhere off in the distance, and nothing else. I made it to the bonfire in about 25 minutes. It was a good night, maybe 15 kids, a fire going strong. That was the last moment of the night that felt normal. Around 2 a.m., people started leaving in groups. Derek caught a ride with someone. I wasn't worried. 2 miles. I'd walked it on the way here, I'd walk it back. I said goodbye to a few people, pulled my hoodie tighter, and started down the road. For the first half mile, I felt completely fine. Then I noticed the car. It was parked off the road, maybe 30 yards ahead of me, tucked partially into the tree line at the edge of a field. No lights, engine off, just sitting there. An older model sedan, dark-colored, though it was hard to tell exactly in the dark. I slowed down, told myself it was probably just someone who'd left their car there after the bonfire. That made sense. I kept walking. As I got closer, I could see the driver's side window was down. That slowed me down again. It was maybe 40 degrees out. Nobody sits with their window down in 40-degree weather. I gave the car a wide berth, moving closer to the opposite shoulder of the road. As I passed it, I glanced over. There was a man in the driver's seat. He wasn't asleep. He was just sitting there, completely upright, looking straight ahead through the windshield. Not at me, not at anything, just forward. I walked faster. I told myself there was a reasonable explanation. Car trouble, waiting for someone, all of that made sense. All of that was logical. But then the engine turned on. No headlights, just the engine. My heart dropped straight into my stomach. I didn't look back. I just started walking faster, not quite running, because some part of my brain told me that if I ran, something would shift. Something would change. I don't know why I believed that, I just did. The car didn't move. I got another 100 yards down the road and it still hadn't moved. I exhaled. I started to slow down just slightly. Then the headlights came on, and the car pulled onto the road. I ran. I don't know if you've ever experienced genuine fear, not the kind from a horror movie, not the kind from a roller coaster. I mean the kind that takes over your entire body without asking permission. My legs were moving before my brain even finished processing what was happening. The gravel was loose and I slipped twice, catching myself with my hands, and I barely even felt it. The car was moving slowly behind me. That was the part that unraveled me. Not fast, slow, like it wasn't in a hurry, like it already knew how this was going to end. I cut off the road and into a field to my left, tearing through dead corn stalks, the broken stems slapping against my arms and face. I had my phone in my hand, but I didn't turn on the light. I just ran blind through that field in the dark. I could see a farmhouse light in the distance. I ran toward it. I hit a fence line, scrambled over it, dropped down on the other side, and sprinted across the yard toward the house. I pounded on the front door with both fists. A dog started barking inside. A light came on upstairs. An older man opened the door, maybe 60, flannel shirt, confused and alarmed all at once. I was gasping so hard I could barely form words. I told him someone was following me. He pulled me inside immediately, locked the door, and called 911. Deputies arrived within 8 minutes. They searched the road, the field, the area around where I'd seen the car parked. They found tire tracks where it had been sitting. They found my footprints in the field where I'd run. They found the fence post I'd grabbed when I climbed over. They never found the car, never identified the driver. No one in the area reported anything. It just disappeared. The deputy who drove me home that night didn't say much, but before I got out of the car, he looked at me and said, "You did the right thing not stopping." I've thought about that sentence more times than I can count. I still don't know what that man wanted. I don't know if he was waiting for anyone specifically or just waiting for whoever happened to walk by. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't run when I did. But here's what I do know. I know that road was empty. I know there was no reason for that car to be parked there in the dark with the window down. I know that when I started moving faster, he waited, and when I started to slow down, he turned on his lights. He was watching. He was measuring. He was patient. And I think about how many times I had walked that road before. How many Friday nights I could have been out there alone. How many chances there had been before that night. Some mistakes you get to learn from. I got lucky enough to be one of them. I was 17, junior year, the kind of age where you think you know everything and the people trying to protect you just don't understand. My parents had a strict curfew, 10 o'clock, no exceptions. And for most of my life I followed it. But that August something in me shifted. Maybe it was the heat, maybe it was being young and stupid. Either way, I started sneaking out. It started small. A bonfire at my buddy's place, maybe a mile and a half down the road. I'd wait until my parents' light went off, ease my window open, drop down into the yard and walk through the back fields to avoid the road. Easy, clean, nobody ever knew. The house I grew up in sat on the edge of a rural stretch of Tennessee, real rural. The kind of place where your nearest neighbor is a 20-minute walk, and the woods behind your property go on for what feels like forever. We had a long gravel driveway, an old barn we didn't use anymore, and a field that turned silver in the moonlight. It was beautiful in a way I never appreciated back then. That night, the night I'm telling you about, was a Friday in late August. My friend Cole had a car, and a group of us were meeting at a gas station about 4 miles out before driving to a party in the next county. I'd done the window routine 3 or 4 times by then. I wasn't nervous. I was comfortable. That was the problem. I slipped out around 11:15. The air was thick and warm, the kind of southern summer night that sits on you like a blanket. I had my phone, $20, and my shoes tied. I cut across the back field like always, climbed the split-rail fence at the far end, and hit the gravel county road. That's when I noticed the truck. It was parked about 100 yards down the road, facing away from me. No lights, engine off, just sitting there in the dark on the shoulder. I didn't think much of it at first. People fish the creek that runs parallel to that road, and sometimes they park out overnight. I walked past it and kept moving. I got maybe 30 feet ahead of it when I heard the door open. I didn't turn around. I don't know why, instinct maybe. I just kept walking a little faster. I heard boots on gravel, slow, unhurried, like whoever it was had nowhere to be and nothing to prove. I turned around. The man was big, not tall exactly, but wide, heavy-set with a dark jacket despite the heat. He had something in his left hand, I couldn't tell what in the dark. He wasn't running. He was just walking toward me at a steady pace. I said, "Hey, you all right?" Because I didn't know what else to say. He didn't answer. I turned back around and started walking faster. My heart was already doing something I'd never felt before, not just beating fast, but hammering in a way that made my hands shake. I pulled out my phone to call Cole and realized I had no signal. Out there on that county road, that wasn't unusual. It didn't make it less terrifying. I looked back again. He was still coming. Same pace, same direction. And I noticed something then. He'd moved to the center of the road. Not the shoulder, the center, like he was making sure I couldn't get around him if I tried to double back. I ran, not a jog. I ran as hard as I ever had in my life, gravel crunching under my sneakers, the dark fields blurring on both sides. I could hear him behind me, not running, not yelling, just moving. I don't know why he didn't run. Maybe he knew something I didn't. Maybe he knew that road better than me. Or maybe he just wasn't in a hurry. There was a break in the fence line about a quarter mile up. I knew it because I'd walked that road 100 times in daylight. I hit that gap, crashed through it into the field, and cut hard to the left toward a cluster of trees near an old drainage ditch. I dropped down into the ditch and pressed myself flat against the embankment, breathing so hard I had to cover my mouth with both hands to muffle it. I lay there for what felt like an hour. It was probably 4 minutes. When I finally raised my head above the ditch line, I could see the road from where I was. The man was standing at the fence gap, just standing there looking out into the dark field. He had a coil of rope in his hand. He stood there for another minute or two, scanning the field slowly. Then he walked back toward his truck, got in, and drove off. No headlights until he was already moving. He just disappeared into the dark. I lay in that ditch until I was sure he was gone. Then I ran home through the field, not the road, climbed back through my window, locked it behind me, sat on the edge of my bed with my shoes still on and shook for 20 minutes straight. I never told my parents. I was too ashamed, not just because I'd snuck out, but because I knew that if I'd left 5 minutes earlier, or if that fence gap hadn't been where it was, the conversation would have been very different. A few weeks later, I heard through people at school that a sheriff's deputy had found an abandoned truck, matching that description, parked near Ridley Creek 2 counties over. Inside were zip ties, a tarp, and a duffel bag with things in it that the person who told me the story wouldn't describe in detail. The truck had been reported stolen 3 days earlier. They never found who was driving it. I think about that night more than I probably should. Not because I'm still scared, I've grown up since then, moved away, built a life, but because of how ordinary it felt right up until the moment it didn't. I wasn't in a horror movie. I was just a 17-year-old kid on a country road in Tennessee making a dumb decision, and something was already out there waiting. That's what stays with me. Not the rope, not the truck. The fact that he was already parked and waiting before I ever climbed out that window. Like he knew someone would come. If you've ever snuck out of your house at night, you know that feeling, that rush, that mix of excitement and nerves that makes you feel alive. I used to love that feeling. I'll never chase it again. I was 16. It was the summer between sophomore and junior year, and my best friend Caleb had this idea that we should meet up at the Old Creek Trail about a mile from our neighborhood in rural Tennessee. Nothing crazy, just 2 dumb kids wanting to feel free for a few hours while our parents slept. I'd done it twice before without a problem. Slipped out the side door, stayed close to the tree line, was back before sunrise. Easy. That night I remember checking the clock on my phone, 1:14 a.m. My parents' light had been off for 2 hours. The house was completely still. I pulled on my jeans, grabbed my shoes, and eased that side door open like I'd practiced. The hinges didn't make a sound. I stepped out into the thick summer air, and the second that door clicked shut behind me, everything outside felt different than I remembered. Quieter. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel like peace. It feels like something is paused. I told myself I was being dramatic. I started walking. Caleb had texted me 20 minutes earlier saying he was already at the trailhead. The walk there was mostly through the back of our subdivision, then along a stretch of county road with no streetlights, and then into the woods for about a quarter mile until you hit the creek. I'd made that walk in the daytime 100 times. At night, it was a different world. My phone flashlight cut a narrow path in front of me and made everything beyond it pitch black. I was about halfway down the county road when I noticed the truck. It was parked on the gravel shoulder maybe 50 yards ahead of me. No lights on, engine off, just sitting there. An older model, dark-colored, couldn't tell what exactly in the dark. I slowed down. I told myself it was probably just someone who'd pulled over to sleep, or maybe a farmer who'd left it there. Tennessee roads had that kind of thing sometimes. I kept walking because what else was I going to do? Turn around and go home. As I got closer, I could see that the cab was empty. No one inside. Windows down on the driver's side. I remember thinking that was odd, windows down but no one in it. I let out a breath and kept moving. I made it to the trailhead. Caleb was there, sitting on a fallen log with his phone in his hand, and the second he saw my face he said, "You okay? You look like you've seen something." I told him about the truck. He looked past me toward the road, shrugged, and said it was probably nothing. We went down to the creek, skipped rocks, talked about stupid things. School, some video game he was obsessed with, normal stuff. I started to relax. The creek sounds helped, that constant, low rush of water moving over rocks. We stayed longer than we planned. It was past 3 a.m. when we finally decided to head back. That's when Caleb grabbed my arm. He didn't say anything. He just grabbed it tight and pointed back up the trail toward the trailhead. I looked. There was a light. Not a phone light, something wider, dimmer, like a lantern, and it was moving slowly, coming down the trail toward us. We both stood completely still. I stopped breathing. The light kept coming, unhurried, like whoever was holding it had all the time in the world. We couldn't see a shape behind it yet. Just the glow, swaying gently with each step, getting closer. Caleb leaned into my ear and whispered one word. "Run." We didn't run up the trail. We couldn't. That's the direction the light was coming from. We cut sideways into the trees along the creek bank, pushing through brush as quietly as two panicking teenagers could manage, which wasn't very quiet at all. I caught a branch across the face hard enough to sting. I didn't stop. We moved parallel to the creek, using the sound of the water to cover our noise, ducking low whenever I thought I heard something behind us. Here's what I can't explain even now. At some point, I looked back through the trees toward the trail, and the light had stopped moving. It was just sitting there, still in the middle of the trail. Like whoever was holding it had stopped to listen. We kept moving. There was a spot about 300 yards downstream where the creek bent close to the back fence line of our subdivision. We'd found it years ago when we were kids. We hit that fence, went over it, and dropped into someone's backyard. I don't even remember whose, and then we just walked fast, heads down, through the neighborhood and back to our street. We didn't speak until we were standing in my driveway. Caleb said, "That was the truck guy." I didn't argue. It made the most sense, and it was the most terrifying option. Someone had been sitting in that truck in the dark on an empty county road at 1 in the morning. No lights, engine off, windows down, waiting. And then they'd watched two teenagers walk past them, followed them to that trailhead, and come down after them with a lantern. We didn't know for certain. We never saw a face. Maybe it was a property owner, maybe a ranger, maybe someone completely harmless checking on the area. Maybe. But here's what I keep coming back to. The truck was parked before I got there, before either of us arrived at the trailhead. Whoever it was had been there first, and they didn't come down to the creek right away. They waited. For over 2 hours they waited in those woods or in that truck, and then at 3 in the morning, when two teenage boys were finally heading back, they started moving toward us. Patient, deliberate, unhurried. That word has stayed with me. Unhurried, because rushed people are scared or excited or reactive. Unhurried people have a plan. I never snuck out again. Not once. And every summer since then, when the nights get warm and heavy and that familiar pull shows up, that feeling of wanting to slip outside and disappear into the dark for a while, I think about a lantern light swaying slowly down a trail at 3 in the morning, and I stay inside. If you made it to the end of this video, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss the next stories. Drop a comment below and tell me, would you have run? Or would you have kept walking? I read every single one. Hit that like button. I'll see you in the next one.